All right, and welcome everybody to the B&H virtual event space. Today we're talking pet photography, photographing dogs and the humans who love them. Pet photographer Alessandra Sawick is joining us to teach some tips and tricks on capturing better dog photos, best practices for dog photography, the best equipment to use, and how to pose and photograph dogs with their humans. So without further ado, Alessandra, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you so much for having me here, Danny. It's such a pleasure to be teaching a class on B&H. I'm very honored. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can start my presentation. So my name is Alessandra Sawick, and I have been a photographer for about 10 years. And I've done everything photography, such as newborn, family, children, events, boudoir, you name it. I always wanted to specialize in one area, a specific area of photography, but I never found anything that would really fill my heart with joy until about 2015 when I had my first dog, Shanti, and everything changed for me. Since then, I have taken several courses in pet photography. I have also studied canine psychology and behavior, Reiki for animals, and animal communication, because my goal is to have a deeper connection with the animals so I can capture not just a photo, but possibly their true spirit. So I'm also a dog mom to these cutie girls, Shanti on the left and Gaia on the right. Gaia came a year later. And I started my pet photography pretty much, it was an accident, it was by chance. I was going through a very major depression at the time. And every time that Shanti saw me with my camera, and I had lost the joy for photography, and every time she saw me with the camera in my hand, she would kind of like strike a pose or look at me with that cute little face. And she was almost saying like, hey, lady, take my picture. And I thought that was cute. So I started like taking her picture, and I couldn't resist, obviously, right? She's cute. And that activity started bringing me a lot of joy again. I started, liking photography again. And I started an Instagram for her. It's just really for fun, because I didn't want to be posting all the pictures in my Facebook. So, and the profile started growing very quickly. And that's when I saw an opportunity for pet photography. I look around in the area. I do live in New York City area, and I didn't see many photographers doing that back in 2015. And I decided to take it more seriously. And like I told you, I took a lot of courses. And 6 years later, here I am at B&H teaching a class on pet photography. And then, today the dogs, they play such an important role, I think, in our lives, in our daily lives, either as family members or best friends, or even as a fur child. Like for many people, including myself, I see that my dogs are my children. And so it has become, I think, very popular nowadays for people to include the pets in the family portraits. And even people that didn't take portraits before because they didn't have children, now they're doing portraits with their dogs. And not to mention that dogs have their own photography, their own photo shoot as well. Many dogs famous on Instagram, as we know. So photographing dogs, I guess some people think that is difficult. But however, if you have some basic knowledge on dog behavior, or you would know if your subject is comfortable in front of the camera, obviously, and it will make your photo shoot just flow so much better. And when you have some techniques and tricks that we're going to talk here about today, some tricks, I think the pet photography will become much less challenging. And today, right, I'm going to be sharing with you some best practice on pet photography. I'm going to be talking about a few tricks and give you many tips to help you learn or improve your craft in photographing dogs and their families. I think one of the best practice of pet photography is to really, truly love dogs. Otherwise, this is not going to be a fun job for you, because I think the photographer need to be comfortable, to feel comfortable around dogs. Most of the times they're going to be jumping on us. They're going to be licking your face, licking your equipment. So, and if you don't enjoy this, obviously you're not going to enjoy the activity of photographing dogs. Sometimes that is drooling all over the equipment. And if that happens, I recommend you bring a cloth to the photo shoot. Will help you clean that up. And also the cloth can help to clean up the dog's mouth, because some of the breeds that we photograph, like a Mastiff or Boxers, they drool a lot. So if you clean that up during the section, it will save you a lot of time later on Photoshop. Another thing that I think is very important, and maybe the key for success in pet photography and the best quality a pet photographer can have, is patience. I always say that patience is my superpower, because in pet photography is very different than you photographing people, right? You can tell people, turn to the right, turn to the left, right? I step back, I step forward, and they'll understand and do that for you. With dogs, right, completely different. It can be frustrating, right? It can be confusing if you don't know what you're doing or what you're telling the dog to do. And even the dogs, when they have some training, even if they know some commands, sometimes they don't feel like doing that day, or sometimes you're working in a place where it's very busy area, like New York City, for example, and they get distracted by the noise, by people going by, and sometimes they're not going to perform for you, even if they're trained the way you would like to. So patience, I think, is like the key for success in pet photography. And if you feel like, you're losing your patience, you're trying to do something and it's not working, the dog is not understanding, take a break during the photo shoot. Go drink some water, take some time for the dog also to drink some water, go for a little walk. Because if you're giving that, I think that everything is energy. And if you're giving off an energy that is stressed, frustrated, maybe even feeling mad, right? The dog is going to be feeling this frustration, unsatisfaction, and maybe even anger. And then he'll shut down and he won't perform at all. So pay attention to this during the photo shoot, because I think it's one of the best practice is to have patience when you're working with animals. And also relax. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun for you as a photographer. It's supposed to be fun for the pet parents. And it's supposed to be fun for the dog as well. If you want somebody that like to control too much the situation, a photo shoot with pet photography, you can control some things, you can plan, but it's not as controllable as you think you could, right? In a regular photo shoot, because sometimes you have a vision for a photo and it might not come out the way you want it. In this photo, I love this photo. They look very happy. The parents look very happy. And I wish the dog was also looking very happy. But the story that I guess he ended up telling ended up being a good picture, but he looks funny and seems like the parents are laughing at him. So it was a good story, and I would take the picture like that. It wasn't what I had planned, but doing pet photography, I learned how to let something go a little bit, right? So you're not going to really find a perfect sometimes image when you're dealing with animals and photographing outside. And then you got to learn how to let it go a little bit. Don't be so controlling, right? Expecting that perfect photo. And I think it's also very important for the photographer to learn a little bit about canine behavior and body language psychology, because you help know if the dog is comfortable or not during the photo shoot. And obviously avoid a bite, because those really hurts. So very, very important. If you don't want to do an extensive course like I have done in canine behavior and psychology, you can find videos, right, on YouTube. You can find videos, information online, books where you can read and learn a little bit about more about it. Or you can even also partner with a local trainer where he can give you maybe some tips, right, about the dogs, about how dealing with dogs, and you can get some photos of him training the dog, and you guys can exchange some information like that, and you'll be building a portfolio as well. So it would be a win-win for everybody. but it's very important when you're working with dogs to understand a little bit of the subject you're working with. Another thing with pet photography is the pet safety always come first. So most of the image that you're gonna see during this presentation, or the image that you see on my website, the dogs are always on leash, and I remove the leash later in post-production, because if we're in the public place, busy place, right, the dogs has to be on leash. God forbid that dog escapes, right, get hit by a car or something happen, attacked by another dog, who knows. So even what I do before the section, I do a consultation with the pet parents and I ask those questions if they are trained to be off leash. And even then, I take my precautions. I try to photograph like early in the morning when there isn't many people out, or later in the afternoon, and try to read even between the lines, because if the pet parents tell you, yeah, they're great off leash, but if they see a squirrel, they will run after. So technically they're not great off leash, right? So just like try to read between the lines when you're doing your consultation. So nothing will happen with the dog because his safety comes first. And I want to show you what we do pretty much in pet photography. That is composite that we do, right? So we can remove that leash later. We can join two pictures. I know this is not the same photo from the first one, but you get an idea that there was a composite and the dog was on leash all the time, being held by his parent. Another thing is, I'm going to talk a little bit later about location, but in this case, this dog was very well behaved. So he was not a jumper. He was not very active. And that's why I put him in the rock, because also this is, you got to be concerned of safety, right? He's a dog that's very hyper, don't want to stay there. We have the river behind, right? Something could happen. So that's what is good to understand a little bit about the dogs during consultation. And when you're working with the animal, it will be easier for you to, your do's or don'ts doing a photo shoot, knowing a little bit of that personality and the behavior of that dog. So since we're talking about Photoshop, very common tool to use in pet photography, not just to remove the leash, but when you're photographing multiple subjects, like in this image, to get one dog to look at the camera, sometimes it's hard. We need some tricks. Now imagine when you need to get 6 dogs to look at the camera. So especially puppies. So I had an assistant for this photo shoot, which made it a little bit easier, but I did use some editing techniques that I exchanged. I did head swap because I wanted all the dogs. The idea was them looking at the camera. I wanted an impactful image like that. And I did also a couple eyes. So I had a photo that was taken in the same location, same lighting, and I was able to do that head swap. So I would have the puppies all looking at me. So again, Photoshop came to the rescue. And talking about rescue, this was a volunteer work done for a dog sanctuary in São Paulo, Brazil. And I think it's very important. It's very important for a photographer, if he can, to volunteer his job, volunteer for shelters, local shelters, to help with dogs adoption, because your photography could save a life. 60% of photos, professional photos, is a statistic that 60% of the dogs are adopted faster. So, you could be practicing pet photography, gaining knowledge, right? Practicing with different breeds, different personalities, because dogs in the shelters is more difficult to work, obviously. But, and you could be building your portfolio as well. So it's kind of, again, a win-win. And if you can, do some volunteer for animal shelters to help save a life. So how can we capture the dog's attention during the photo shoot? You can use a tennis ball. You can use toys, squeaky toys. There's some noise makers apps out there. You can imitate a cat, a dog, a parrot, a chicken, whatever it takes, you guys, whatever. You can whistle, okay? You can also use words, keywords that will get the dog's attention. Some dogs, they understand, many dogs understand words. So you can say, I don't know, treats, car, you wanna go in a car, or chicken. Some dogs, they do know those words. I would say also during the consultation, talk to the pet parent and then write it down. Ask them, is there any keywords that triggers your dog attention? And write that down so you can use that for at the photo shoot. One tip that I'll give you, try not to ask to call the dog by name, because when we call the dog by name, we want them to come to us, right? Unless you're doing a type of photography that you want him to walk towards you, then please call his name. But if you're doing a portrait that you want him to stay still, do not call his name, because he's going to come to you, and then you're going to tell him not to come to you, and then he's going to get confused. So try to remember that. Another thing is, during the photo shoot, the parents are trying to help you to get the dog attention. Depending on the situation, you might need their help, but depending on the situation, you can just be very nice to tell them that you have your tricks and you know what to do, because sometimes it gets confusing too. Everybody making noises and calling the dog, and he doesn't know which direction to look, and you want him to look towards you, okay, towards your direction, you the photographer. So, or if you're working with an assistant, right, she should be close to you, but try to be always the center of attention on that photo shoot where the dog will be looking at you. So you hold the treats, you make the noises. And treats, so I was talking about treats. So of course, the ultimate reward for dogs are treats if they're motivated by food. Some dogs are not, and if they're not, just use the other tricks that I told you, noise makers or toys. But also another thing you can ask, some dogs, they might have some dietary restriction. So in your consultation, ask that as well. I bring delicious organic treats with me because I want the dogs to like my treats. But if they have some special diet, then I'll ask the pet parents to bring the treats and I will use that. And the same thing with the treats, I try to hold them because I want the attention towards me. And if you bring treats, you guys, bring the small treats. Don't give like too big a treat so you could feel overfeed, right? The dog, it might give him stomachache later. So bring small treats with you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about location, where you're gonna photograph the dogs. When you're looking for places to photograph, when you do people's portraits, you're kind of looking at our eye level, right? Human level. So you're looking for places around here. When you're looking for places to photograph dogs, I suggest you look down below, right, on the floor, because that's where the dog eye level, right? And I also suggest when you're photographing dogs that you lay down on the floor, because you're gonna capture a picture with more impact in eye level of the dog. Or you can even raise the dog, and I'm gonna show you later. But so try to look for locations down below, like bed of flowers or something nice. And when you're looking up, also you could, right? If you elevate the dog, like I had on that picture with the George Washington Bridge, or in this case here, you can put the dog in a chair, right? On the sofa, or if you're photographing outdoors, on the bench, on the tree trunk, like this cutie here on the left, so adorable. And this one, you guys, my assistant was actually behind of the tree trunk holding his bottom, because the idea was to photograph him there. I had that idea, but there was nothing. He could not stand because he was a puppy, and there was nothing we could put there. So she just hid behind it there, and she's holding him while I was able to do that photo. One thing that I love putting puppies, because they're a little bit hyper. So I like putting them up high because it makes them stop for a minute. Or if they're contained in one place, it's more like they're going to stay still. But again, check if the puppy is not a jumper. If he's a jumper, be careful. Do not put him in some place where he's going to jump and get hurt. Make sure that if you have an assistant or a pet parent that will be next to the dog, right, holding him in there. The husky, that's why I had the assistant holding, because he was, as you can see, his cute little face, right? He was much hyper. But the other dog on the left, he was just so cool, very good dog, good behavior, and he could sleep in that chair all day. So there was no assistant next to him. But make sure another thing, and make sure you ask the pet parents if you're gonna elevate the dog, ask if they're not afraid of heights. Believe it or not, some dogs are afraid of heights. So do not put a dog up if he's afraid of heights, okay? And be careful with senior dogs. Senior dogs, we do not elevate the senior dogs, because some of them have hip problems, leg problems, and God forbid they fall out of the place, right? And we could have a very, very big damage. So do not elevate senior dogs. All right, so what is in my camera bag? Besides a lot of noisemakers, toys, treats, water, I also bring my photography equipment, obviously. I do shoot with that Nikon Z6 now. I just got it recently, but for many years I've been using the Nikon 750. And I do not have mirrorless lenses yet. I got an adapter to be using my older lenses. And I do want to upgrade later on for everything for mirrorless, because they're lighter equipment. Last year I had a photo shoot. It was 2 mile hike for a pet brand. And we carrying all those equipments, very, very heavy. It was seeing a chiropractor for a few days after that photo shoot. That's when I decided to change my camera, to trade my camera. And eventually I'm gonna get also the mirrorless lenses. But let me show you the lenses that I have now. One of my favorite lenses is the Sigma 135 1.8. Absolutely love the look of this lens. So creamy, gorgeous. The compression that it gives, separating the subject from the background, is just very beautiful. And I want to tell you that in pet photography, we should always focus in the dog's eye, because the eye is the window to the soul. And this image, it was also made with the 135 Sigma art. And for you to capture a photo of the dog, a profile photo like this, is very simple, very, very easy. The assistant had the treat on the front of the dog, the way you see here. So he's looking towards her. I just positioned myself in front of the dog and I took that picture. So very, very simple to capture a profile if it's not what you're looking for to create. Also, I use the 135 Sigma to capture dogs in action. I think it gives a very sharp look to the image. This is a great lens, but I just think it's a little bit too heavy. When you're photographing dogs in action, make sure to use a very high shutter speed. I would say 1/1000 of a second minimal. And even when you're photographing for portraits, dogs, there are subjects that they're moving all the time. So you should, I use also 1/250 of a second minimal when I'm photographing dogs, even if it's a portrait, okay? Because there's a ear moving, there's the eye that moves, so they never really stay still, okay? So I love the 135, but my go-to lens is actually the Nikon 70-200, 2.8. That's the lens that is in my camera all the time. I love, I use for action, I use for portraits, I use for everything. I do love the look of the prime lenses, but doing this for the past 6 years almost, I came to realize that zoom lens is so much more versatile and more practical to use for pet photography, especially if they're in action, they're moving like this. It gives me, I can capture more photos, right? I can far away, I can use my zoom and get him closer because it's easier. move with the zoom, then zoom with my feet with the 135. So that's what I like. Let me see what else. Oh, let me give you a few tips to capture the dog running. So make sure that you photograph in burst mode. I will do that because I can get different expressions of the dog. And also use the back button focus of your lens, and always try to focus in the eye. And that's why also I got the Z6, because I heard that is a software here that we can track the eye. I'm trying to figure that out. I think it's going to make my life easier. But because of the action when the dog is running is harder to capture, but with practice and using the back button focus will really help you. But I do use the Nikon 70-200 also for portraits. Like I told you, I think is gorgeous. The lens is in my camera all the time. Another Nikon lens that I have is the 50 1.8. That was actually my first lens I got on B&H back in 2011 when I started in photography. And I also want to say that photographing pets, you can photograph them in any angle, okay? It depends on your creativity, right? You can do from the top, bottom, the bottom up, the profile. It depends your creativity and depends your style of photography as well. Let me give you a little tip how to capture a picture like that. What I did is I bring the treat, I put the treat in his nose, and I bring it straight to my lens. So he will look right in my lens. And I click the shutter, I give the treat. Because what happens, that click of the shutter, many dogs are smart and they're associated that with clickers, right, for training. So if you click the shutter, give the dog the treat, even if you didn't capture the picture the way you wanted it the first time. Keep doing this until you capture the picture. But the thing is, we'll incentivize the dog to keep looking at you, because if you don't give the treat, right, what's the point? Kind of like he'll say, well, she's getting my attention, but I'm not getting anything with that. So keep giving the treat until we're able to capture that photo. Also, when you're photographing like image like this, pay attention to the background so it's clean and it's not taking away the attention from the pet itself. I did also this image with the 50 millimeters. I like to incorporate some leading lines into my composition so it add more interest to the pet's eyes. And this dog is a senior dog. So another thing that happens when you're photographing senior dogs, this one, unfortunately, Diva, she was had terminal cancer and she was gonna be put down. It was 4 days actually after we did this photo shoot. And so we did this memory section for her. And I asked the parents, because I don't know if you can see here, there is some stitches in her legs. This marks that she was being hospitalized. Her leg has been shaved. So I asked the pet parent if they would like me to fill that on Photoshop, to fill the fur, to make it look perfect, or if they would like to have that as is. So it depends on them. Okay, in this case, her parents wanted to have as is because they wanted to remember her, right? The way she was before she left this world. So make sure not to, you always ask. Some dogs also have cataracts in the eye. So ask that, because you can remove on Photoshop as well, but ask the pet parents before, okay? And remember that I told you to take care of senior dogs, not to put them high in rocks or benches or things like that where they can fall, okay? And another thing, this I did with the Sigma. I also have the Sigma 35 millimeter. And I use either the 50 or the 35 to capture this way from shooting down on the dog's eyes. I put this picture here because doodles, I say all the doodles, golden doodles, very common for us here in this area of New York City. But these dogs, they have a little bit of fur, a little bit of hair in their eyes. And I said to you before, the eyes is the window of the soul, but some of those dogs, sometimes you're gonna photograph them and you won't see their eye because they're groomed in a way that you can't see their eyes. You can lift, right, bring his attention to bring him to an open space where there's more light, and they'll bring more eye to his eye, and do the same thing that I showed you with the treat, right? Bring into the lens so he looks up, and you get the catch light in the eye, because it's very important to capture in dog photography the catch light in the eye. It gives more life. It brings the image. It gives more life to the image. All right, Danny, I don't know. I did have here, I'm going to start talking a little bit about pets and humans, how to photograph. I don't know if we give a little break and take some questions. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we did have one question from a viewer on Facebook asking in regards to getting hired to photograph dogs professionally. So, like, how do you get your name out there and start getting clients? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, I do a lot of local partnerships with, dog businesses, dog walking, dog daycare. And so we can get this local referrals. But I would say also, like any marketing, like any other photography, like website, SEO. SEO is very good for me. People find me on Google a lot. I think that's very important. And also volunteer work. I started pretty much with volunteer work for the dog shelters, and the words just spread. So I would say it's a combination. I don't think that is like a key for this, but it's a combination of doing local partnerships, your own marketing on social media, volunteer for dog shelters, and also working your SEO to be found locally.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's all the questions we had so far. So if you want to, continue, if people have more questions, please get them in, and we'll be happy to get them answered for you. But if you want to continue, we'll.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about photographing the pets with their humans. Most of my clients are dog moms and people that really refer to themselves as pet parents. Animals have really the ability to lift our spirits and bring the smile on our faces, right? They're really part of our family and our daily lives, and we want to be with them. We love them. They love us. And that's why I like to capture some photos that really brings this relationship, right, between humans and animals. I'm very intrigued by that, this energy, this connection that we have with dogs, especially. So I love to capture the moment, right, those candid moments between them. Even though these are candid moments, photos, when we do lifestyle, is all directed, right, to be that way most of the times. So when I'm looking forward to capture some connection between dogs and family and their moms, I usually want to have them the same level, right, eye level. So in this case, because she was a big dog, she's a higher on a rock, and her mom is standing right next to her. In this way, I can, direct them to interact with one another, to kiss, and so I can be capturing those moments. I talk about kiss. Also ask the pet parents. Some pet parents don't like to kissing their dogs, right? Or some dogs don't like to be kissed. Not to be honest, this is a human thing. They tolerate us kissing them, but they don't really like it, be hugged or kissed. So find out before the photo shoot if they have this kind of relationship. Otherwise, of course, you're not going to ask them to be doing kisses or getting close or licking during the photo shoot. What you can do too is sitting the mom on the floor, right? So they can be on the same level as well. And just walk around, go around them, capturing different angles. And doing this, I suggest do not give the mom the treats, because what happens sometimes, the dogs, they're distracted and the mom would say, oh, give me the treats so they can look at me. At this photo shoot, when I'm trying to capture connection, I do not give her the treats to hold, because if I do, the dog will be looking at her hand on the treats and not in her face, okay? Even though they like the mom, but I think they love treats as much. So don't give her any treats in her hand, all right? And same concept here, the same thing. When I'm photographing mom and dog and they're close, my focus is always on the dog. Sometimes the mom has a little bit of soft focus. It doesn't bother me because the dog is the center of attention on my photos. So I just wanted to point that out to you as well. Now, when you're photographing the family together with their dogs, the same concept, right? If I'm trying to capture connection, I wanted them to be together. I either put them on a bench or sitting up high like this. And I ask them to interact with one another. In this case, in this only pose, we could create so many variations. I could put the dog sitting between them, right? They could be hugging the dog. They could be kissing the dog on the cheek. The dog could be interacting with the father, with the mother. So you can capture so many images when they're all together on the same spot. And if the pet is smaller, you can ask the pet parents to pick him up, like on this one here. Also ask if they pick them up. There is people that don't like picking up their dog, so also find that out before. You come to learn when you're doing this for a little while, right? What people do and don't. It's not because the way you treat your dog at home that everybody does the same. Everybody's different. So in this case, right, I asked them to pick it up the dog, and again, I created many different poses from them just standing there. That is others, they're looking at each other. I turned around, so I photographed also in a different angle. And give them guidance, like any other photo shoot. You're the photographer, you are the director of the photo shoot. Give them guidance to look at each other, because even if a photo is natural as this one, it was guided to get to this moment, okay? Now, if you photograph pet parents, they're maybe a little shy to be on camera, or they're not sure. You can do some candid moments like that, relaxed moments where they're playing with the dogs. I usually use the 70 to 200 millimeter because then I'm far away from them. And either they can play with the ball or with frisbee, and you just stay, behind, just capturing the moments. Since you're not too close to them, they're going to be more natural, right? Because kind of like you're not even there. Make sure you post them in a place where you have the light is even, so you'll be able to capture all different poses, okay? Also, in this one, you can ask them if the dog does any tricks, right? Like giving paw or high five. You can also be capturing those photos at this moment, this time too. Make sure that you use the burst mode to capture this playful moments, because you might miss, right, one little nice moment that you could have captured. And yeah, so another thing that I wanted to tell you, when I do the consultation, I ask the parents. So that's how I know when I'm going to photograph. I ask the parents, what do you prefer, post photos or more, candid moments, or maybe a mix of both? Most of the people ask for a mix of both, and I end up doing that. But I like when I go to photograph, knowing what I'm going for, right? What they're gonna like, because later on I'm gonna sell those photos and I wanted them to buy, so I wanted to photograph the way they would like to be photographed, and ask that on the consultation. So I was talking about post photos. Post photos are still the favorite of my clients. And why? Because I'm here to solve a problem for them. Most of them cannot get a photo of their dog looking at the camera. That's the most complaint they have. So the post photos are still the most popular ones. And let me tell you how to capture a photo with everybody looking at the camera, some tricks. Instruct the parents to be looking at you the whole time, like freeze that smile, look at me, I will get the dog's attention. So the way I do some noises, or I have some treats or a ball or some toy that I will try to get his attention. Sometimes some dogs are a little bit stubborn, right? And the parents trying to help you. So they're like, oh, look at the photographer. Look at the photographer. And they you end up getting photos with them pointing at you. So I always tell them, no, it's okay. You don't need to point at me. Your job is stay there, smile, freeze that smile. I'll get the dog's attention. I have all the tricks and all the tricks, right, to get him to look at me. So this is what I do. And sometimes I make very weird noises, guys, with my mouth. I don't even know where I make up those noises, but I make noises and the parents end up laughing. And that's why we have some natural photos as well. It's not exposed, but it's not everybody staying still like statues, right? Because it becomes being fun for them as well. Now, another thing about post photos is these are the photos that end up being the huge wall art for their home. So that's why I capture some photos like that. It depends on the photo shoot. I started with the more candids, right? But showing you in this presentation, but every photo shoot is different. If the parents are a little bit uptight, maybe I'll start with the posed photos first, and I'll do those candid moments, right? Those connection moments more towards the end of the photo shoot. Once we broke the ice, when they're more comfortable being in front of the camera, being with me. So, play by ear, depending on the photo shoot, depend of the parent and depend of the dogs you're photographing. Another posed photo that I try to do sometimes is the dogs, they were looking at me if they have a bench like that. This dog was not trained to put his paw on the bench whatsoever. We did that right there and then. And it's not hard. Most dogs, they're very smart and they can learn. What I did is every time that he put his paw on the bench, I would give him a treat, right? Good boy. And he understood very quickly if he kept his paw at the bench, he would get a treat. So I stepped back and I photographed. This is pretty much what I did. I had an assistant in this photo shoot as well. But I had the treat because remember I told you I want him to look at me, because if the assistant had the treat, he would be looking at her, not at me. So sometimes you have a vision for a photo shoot like this, right? I tried. Perry was a very, very good dog. And the second time I stepped back, I was able to capture this photo. But sometimes happens that you have a vision and you're not going to be able to achieve that vision, right? It's not going to work. If the dog doesn't want to do not force the dog. Obviously, I try a few times. If it doesn't work, no hard feelings. I won't be sad. That's okay. I'll try something else. All right. Don't keep trying something that the dog doesn't want to do, because obviously, it's not gonna be nice for the dog. He's not gonna love you as much. Now, in this photo, the same concept with the bench, them looking at me. This one was a little bit more challenging because it was 3 dogs, right? I did have an assistant as well. She was hiding behind that tree, but I had the treats with me as well. So that's why they're all looking at me, okay? Now, this with the treats, guys, is funny because sometimes I achieve my goal of the photo shoot. When we leave the photo shoot, sometimes the dogs, they want to go home with me. They don't want to be with their parents. And then I know, like, I did good. They really love me. I love doing the walks in my photo shoots. Usually, depending if the parents are uptight or very shy, I would start with the walk first because that helps break the ice a little bit. Now, let me give you a couple of tips for capturing a photo of the parents walking with their dogs, right? Everybody looks so good in this photo, but it took a while. It might take 2 or 3 walks, okay? Going all back and walking towards me. One thing is pay attention to the leash, because sometimes they're conscious they're being photographed. So they're holding the leash up and very tight. So make sure you tell them to relax their hand like normally, like they're going for a walk with their dogs, to relax their hand, okay? Another thing, I tell them to interact, to look at each other, to look towards the right, the left, to look at their dogs, so I can capture this image in a different way. This dog was off leash. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody in this park. She's good off leash. But what was happening in this image, she was getting out the frame a little bit because she was off leash. So we did the walk twice, and I was about to ask the parents, like, I think we need to put her on the leash so the father could hold and she could come closer. But she ended up, the mother called, and she ended up coming closer to him anyway, and I was able to get that shot. I was laying down on the floor, and as I said, I directed the parents to be interacting among themselves, looking at each other, and I was going to make a very loud noise to get the dog to look at me, and that's what I got, them to look at me. If it doesn't work, right, if I have an image that a sequence of images, maybe I'll do head swaps, but with this one, I was able to get on camera. And the same concept when you're photographing just one dog with the parents. It depends the story I think you want to tell on a photograph. If this photo, for example, was an engagement shoot, I would have put the dog either side of the pet parents and have them together, maybe holding hands, right, telling a different story. But this photo, another thing with this dog, he didn't walk so well on leash. As you can see, he's pulling a little bit. And if you're photographing a dog that is pulling so much on the leash, I usually ask the parents to stop, right? When they're stopped, the dog also will stop and come back to them and then position himself. That's when I get the shot, if I'm trying to do the walk. And the same thing, if it's a dog that is pulling too much, I try to maybe come in a different angle, like this one towards the side. In this case, he was pulling, but because he's walking, because it's towards the side, right? So it doesn't matter if the dog is walking in front of them. It's still, I have a really good image with more impact. Maybe it's the skyline of New York City, but it's a beautiful photo. Another thing I like to do is to walk back, because this one is usually like the last page of the album, the album that they will buy. And I like doing also with the back, them looking towards somewhere, especially when I'm photographing around here that I can get to the New York City skyline. I usually get them to look at the city, and I tell, keep looking at the city, as you're grounded for a few minutes. You just look at the city. I'm going to turn the dog around. I want him to look at me. And this is what I did. I stepped back and I made a weird noise. I used my little trick. He looked at me and I was able to capture that photo. I guess that's it. I covered a lot of things, tried to go fast here in an hour, but let me know if you have any questions about everything that we covered.
All right, awesome, Alessandra. That was great. Really great information. We have a bunch of questions coming in. So first, we'll start with a question from a viewer on Zoom, Craig, asking, how do you prefer to sell final photos or prints to clients? He says he's looking for site recommendations other than SmugMug.
I use several labs in the US, the WHCC. I use some labs in Europe actually too. So I can't really say the names. I don't remember all of them. But the way I do my photos, so I get really good quality photos. I don't get like flappy prints that you get anywhere or shutter smug like the person is saying. I get really from high quality labs, because my idea is to sell that photography, not just having digitals, but to sell the prints and to sell. My goal is actually to sell wall art, because that's where I'm going to be making more money. So I do canvases, I do frames. I don't have a studio, but I always tell the client that I am a full service studio, meaning you're not just going to get the digitals, right? You're going to get some quality products that you're going to have for a very long time. And you're going to invest some good money on this, because photographing dogs is actually difficult. Now I trained to be able to do this. So it costs a little bit more. I kind of build a photography business now that I call more like a boutique, right? More like a luxury brand. because I want to reach out to those pet parents that would, for those families that have the pets as their kids, they're willing to spend more money on their pets. And that's my motto of business.
Awesome. And Flav is asking, would you tell us more about the questions you asked the parents about their pets before the session?
Yeah, sure. So I asked about that, if they're trained off leash. I asked if they have any restriction. I asked a lot about their behavior, if they are, a fearful dog, if they're energetic dog, because I want to understand what I'm working with. If they say, oh my God, he's so full of energy, he doesn't stop a minute, especially if you're photographing outdoors, I would say come 20 minutes, half hour before the photo shoot, walk him around so he can sniff the park, he can get off his system. Because when I come to photograph, he's going to be a little bit calmer. I always say that a tired dog is a happy dog. So I wanted to know right before the photo shoot. I also asked if they're interested, right? What kind of final product they're interested, right? Prints and albums and wall art. What else? I asked about the poses, what they like, either post photos or more candid. And what else? I think that I can't remember right now, but I do like a extensive questionnaire asking those things, and then I set up a consultation to go over those answers, because those will help me to prepare better for the photo shoot and also to understand the subject I'm working with.
Now, when you're in a shoot, have you ever been in a situation where you're kind of like pulling out every trick in the book and the dog is just not responding the way you want? Like, what do you do in those scenarios?
I have photographed, I think, maybe 2,000 dogs so far in this past 6 years. So I think I can get any dog right to pose for me. I can. But I would say you should try. Maybe it's the location. I always suggest, for example, if it's a fearful dog, right? So if you go photograph him in the middle of Manhattan, it's like so noisy, it's overpowering, right? So you should go early in the morning where there isn't many people, no skateboards, no bicycles, no things that would distract or make him feel afraid. So that's why I think it's good to know, because sometimes if you cannot get a photo, if the dog is not performing, it's because he's really scared of his surrounding. So I bring lavender oil, because I do Reiki, so I bring lavender oil with me. I use that. I do not use on the dog because it's not good to put in their skin, not for human or dogs. So I put in a bandana, or I put it a little bit where he can sniff a little bit to calm down if it's not what's happening, right? If he's very anxious or fearful, will help him calm down a little bit. So I have this little trick too, and that's what I say. I think it's practice. The more dogs you photograph, maybe learning about their behavior, volunteer dog shelters, because you're going to find dogs with so many different personalities at dog shelter. It's very challenging, but he helps you be a better professional for sure.
Awesome. And question about lighting. So Michael's asking, do you use a flash for lighting, or do you do it in Photoshop? And also, do you find that dogs respond well to flash even?
I use natural lighting. I don't use flash, but I don't think some dog, it's very rare when the dog is fearful to the flash. It could happen when when you're working with a very fearful dog, then I would say try to use a continue light instead flash. But also, if you're being very patient and you're having attention how the dog is reacting, you could train him. Because if the flash, when the flash or the noise or the light, if he's got scared, try to talk to him in a sense, like, give him a treat, associate with something good instead with something bad. Sometimes the dogs, they get scared of the flash or even the big camera, right? Because it's a big black thing. So try to help him associate that with the positive, not negative. I usually, when I see, before I start the photo shoot, when I have my lens, I come next to the dog and I click the shutter a couple of times to see if he's going to be scared of my equipment or the shutter. Most of them are not, but some are. They're very fearful. So I try to come closer. I throw a treat until he comes closer to me. Sometimes I put the treat right on top of my camera, right on top of my lens. So he comes and eat there. And then he just loses that fear. He's like, oh, all right, maybe this is not a monster that will kill me. You know, there's something good there. My treats are there. So try to be patient. And that's why it's good to know before the photo shoot, because if you know, if you're dealing with a fearful dog, then you can plan that 15, 20 minutes before the shoot until you can help him get used to the equipment, to yourself, and lose a little bit of that fear to be photographed.
Awesome. And then we had a couple questions about the length of your sessions. So how long do they usually last, or does it depend on each pet?
Yeah, usually it's about an hour and a half. I say that pets, they're like children, you know, they attention span, an hour and a half is gone. So I never last more than 2 hours in the photo shoot. If I have to stay there to try to get the dogs, you know, to perform, I will, but I can get everything done in average an hour and a half. More than that, I just think it's too much and the dog is just gonna really get tired, exactly like children.
All right. Well, Alessandra, that was a really awesome presentation. Thank you so much. It looks like we covered everything, all the questions that came in. We really appreciate you spending your time with us and giving your knowledge on this.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here. And, you know, it was a pleasure. I guess I can give my Instagram for people to look.
Yeah, to let people know where they can find you.
Awesome, awesome. So you can find me on Instagram. I also, Alessandra Sawick. I also love to being hanging out lately in at the clubhouse. So I'm there as Ali Sawick. And Facebook, I'm Inspired by Animals. And also my website, inspiredbyanimals.com. And I just want to do a plug in there if I can, that the world of photography, I know it can be very stressful, and many photographers, especially if they're a beginner, there's so much information out there, you know, and they don't know how to prioritize in order to take their art or their business to the next level. Throughout my career, I had wonderful mentors that held my hand. I learned more like that, one-on-one with people. That's my way of learning. So I just want to offer that I also do mentoring. If people want to learn more that way, I do in-person mentoring in the New York City and North New Jersey area. But if you're not in this area, I also do mentoring online. I have a team. I have actually a community in Brazil, over 1,000 photographers. This community is in Portuguese. So if there's any Brazilian listening or Portuguese who want to be part of it, is also, I teach pet photography there, and everything is in Portuguese. Okay. But it's a pleasure. It was nice to be here. Very I'm honored, because when I started photographing, I've taken so many classes on B&H. I have visited the event space so many times, and it was so helpful to me. And I always thought I never thought I would be in this other side teaching a class. So I'm very happy, very honored to be here. Thanks B&H for this opportunity.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure having you. You did a great job. Great presentation. Thank you so much. Everybody go check her out on her social media. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you to all of our viewers for watching. And we'll see you next time at the B&H Virtual Event Space.